Greetings, fellow man. Servus Männer. It's Red Pill Germany again, and today I want to talk about how Muslims actually are trying to convert millennials in the Western world. Now, we here in Europe know that some of the most radical people in the Islamic communities are Western converts, actually, young converts. So a lot of these millennials are actually converting to Islam because they don't really like the West so much. So they maybe didn't read Aaron Clary's book on how to choose the right major, and they are not from rich family, not from a rich background, and they still studied a useless degree. And then they're not engineers, they're not doctors, no, they studied maybe sociology or communication studies or even gender studies, and now they cannot pay back their student loans. Of course, this makes them very angry, and they feel maybe hopeless. And then Islam comes along and tells them that all this will go away if they just submit to Muhammad. Now, in a couple of tweets, the organizer, this Palestinian American woman, the organizer of the Women's March in Washington, it's a little time ago, but she tweeted basically that all your loans would be interest free once Sharia takes over in the Western world, right? But is that really the case? So I was just curious, because I gave interest-free loans to my family, and I also received some money when I wanted to buy a car or whatever, and I was $5,000 short. My dad gave me some money, or back then when my dad needed some money for his divorce, I gave him the money, and he paid me back 5 years later. So I grew up with my dad and my brother. So the three of us are pretty close and we trust each other, and we would consider giving the other person an interest-free loan. But how does it look like when a complete stranger asks you for a lot of money? I mean, what is my motivation to give a stranger my hard-earned money? The only motivation, because I'm taking a big risk, you see. I mean, he could die, his investment could fail, he could just commit fraud and never pay me back, right? I want some profit, and that profit is the interest, of course. So that is the only motivation that I have for giving a complete stranger my hard-earned euros. But how does that work in the Muslim world, right? How do the followers of the Arab Muhammad do business? What if a young person there needs money for a house or a car or something, right? So is it really like that poof, all of your loans would just become interest free and everyone can borrow as much money as they want and pay it back whenever you want, no interest, it's all cool, man, we're all Muslims here? Nope, that's actually not how it works. So I had a little look into Islamic banking and Islamic finances, and my extensive 5-minute studies on Wikipedia yielded really insightful results. So, for example, there are Islamic banks that conform to Sharia law. And if I understood it correctly, then the Sharia forbids actually that you take part in a business where you would have to pay interest or where you would receive interest. So you cannot loan out money for interest. That is clear, right? So what if you need money? What do you do? So what is allowed under Sharia law is the selling and buying of goods. So there is a whole list on Wikipedia on terminology from Islamic finance, basically, and there are some really funny things involved. I mean, I have to give it to them. They're really creative in a very awkward way. I mean, what they really want to do, because Muslims also don't give their money to strangers. They also want to be recompensated for the risk they take, right? But they're not allowed to do it. So what do? So there are these arrangements where basically the bank would buy a house for you and then rents the house to you until you paid it back or something. And then of course they come up with all these new words that it is basically interest, but it's not interest because it's a different name. And the trick is always there must be some tangible good like a house or a car or a precious metal, some tangible thing has to be involved in the transaction, and then it's okay. Basically, this is the gist of it as far as I understood it. Yeah. So the person that lends you the money, or the bank or whatever, they would actually buy something for you, and then you have to pay them a fee so that you can rent that, and so on and so on, right? So it is basically interest. That's what it is. And in Malaysia, I think they have also sharia credit cards, and not only are you not allowed to buy alcohol with such a credit card, for example, but of course you pay an annual fee or a monthly fee for your credit card bills, which is basically interest, right? So again, of course you pay interest, it is just a different name. Yeah, they call it a fee or something, but it's interest in the end. But I have to say, my favorite Mahometan financial transaction or instrument would actually have to be tawaruk. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. So let me see if I get that correctly. You need money, and a bank has like $1,000 worth of iron in the bank. That's why it's called the Iron Bank, I guess. And so what they do is then they sell that iron to you for $1,000, but you don't have to pay now. You pay in 1 year. And at the very same instant, the room where this big block of iron is stored at is not even opened. At the very same instant, the bank buys the iron back from you for $900, which they have to pay immediately. And it basically means they have iron in the back room and they give you $900. That's what it means. And then in 1 year, you pay then this delayed price of $1,000. That basically translates into a $900 loan at an interest rate of approximately 11%. And I have to really give it to them. This is so awesome. I mean, what they want to do is just have a normal loan with interest, but they have to have a big chunk of iron in the back room. This is really hilarious. So that they can pretend that you just bought the iron from the bank and they immediately bought it back for a little lower price, but they have to pay now, whereas you can pay in 1 year. So the mental gymnastics is just amazing. And you know what? I really think maybe there isn't even a big block of iron ore in the back room. Or maybe some Muslim scholar would actually declare the iron core of the earth as actually the vault of the Islamic banks. So they could virtually 1 million times per second they could sell and buy the Earth's core. That would be awesome, wouldn't it? I mean, you have to give them that. They're creative when it comes to going around their religious law. I wasn't taking a loan on interest. No, I was buying and selling iron that I'm sure is somewhere in that back room. And of course, there is also student loans for our young millennials in Great Britain, for example, because in Great Britain there is not only Sharia courts and Sharia student loans, there is Sharia everything. So of course, the Sharia student loan in the UK looks like that. You do not take a loan that you would have to pay interest for. No, there is a community pool, and out of this pool, your education will be paid. And then, later in life, when you're successful, then you just have to give back to the community, which is exactly the same as if you just take up a loan. Because when you think about it, what is a loan, right? I mean, think about it. You're a 50-year-old guy. You paid back your student loans a long time ago, your house is paid off and all that stuff, you're successful in your career, and you have like a little more than a decade left before retirement, and you need now return on interest now. Yeah? And then you see this young man, this 25-year-old man who wants to go to med school, and you see he's really smart, he has potential. What do? You give him some of your surplus money, and you want some interest for your retirement. And then when that guy is 30, maybe he has then the money that he borrowed from you to pay for a private practice or going to med school and then become a well-paid doctor at a university, hospital, what do I know, right? And then he can pay you back, and then he can lend that money again to a younger person, and so on. So it is basically the very same thing. What they do is they just come up with new words, which is basically interest, or they find a very creative way how basically non-existent metal is somehow involved in the deal, right? So this is just a bunch of mental gymnastics to me. But you can say now, well, it is the same thing in the end. But I don't think it's really the same thing. Because what you do when you appeal to someone's religiosity or to someone's tribalism, you tell these people, oh, you cannot take that money to the Jewish banks or to the German banks. These are dirty infidels. They cannot take your money. It's against the religious law, right? What you do then basically is you limit the competition among banks for the clientele that believes in this religious law. So that means when you have a very Islamic religious person, you basically guilt him into not considering Western banks or non-Muslim banks for that matter. And then you, in many places, like in the Western world, for example, you have a quasi-monopoly in some places because there are not many Sharia banks, right? And in addition to that, people who make financial decisions based on old ancient religious text might not be the sharpest tools in the shed. So that means these banks know that these people are easy to manipulate, so they can give them a really bad deal. And when the bank already knows, oh, it's a religious nut job, we might just take advantage of him. And if you think now that Muslims would never take advantage of fellow Muslims, then you have to watch my next video. Because in my next video, I will tell you not about Islamic banking, but about Islamic investing in Europe. And the story is a little older, but it is really worth considering these things. So I guess to be fair, only time will tell if this Sharia banking is the big fraud that I think it is, or if it's really okay. I don't know. It just seems like a big hassle to me. And in the best case scenario, it's actually the very same as our normal secular Western banking. And in the worst case, I guess it could be a big fraud because when you have to appeal to someone's religiosity for them to sign a contract, maybe they want to take advantage of you then. Yeah? If they have to appeal to your tribalism and not to getting the best deal. I mean, it's not a rational decision. It's a kind of a religious, a moral decision almost, right? Then probably they try to manipulate you, right? They don't want you to read the fine print. They don't want you to make a rational decision. They want you to pay more than you would if you would take into consideration also the competitors of these Sharia banks. And by the way, a little side note at the end. I mean, I heard recently that some person told me that when a follower of Muhammad would actually say Sharia, then he just means law, right? He doesn't necessarily mean Islamic or Arab religious law. No, he just means law. So there is a German Sharia and there is an American Sharia, and they all call it Sharia. But when you look at these tweets again, when she says, well, if you still have to pay interest, that means there is still no Sharia in America. Well, obviously, this person here, this Women's March organizer, when she uses the word Sharia, she actually means Islamic religious law, right? So the law that is in accordance with the religious law that was laid down by Muhammad, right? So that is just a side note I wanted to make, that don't believe these things when they say, oh, it's just a translation error, it's taken out of context, oh, this is not in the Quran at all. Yeah, I think it is. So I think, to sum it up, this is one of the strategies that these Muslim ideologues, these people who try to convert people in the West, this is one angle that they're playing. This is one strategy they employ to get their hooks into young millennials in the West who made a bunch of wrong decisions. They didn't buy Aaron Clary's book, for example, or they just studied some bullshit degree and took way too many student loans. Follow your heart and the money will follow. And these people who went to occupy Wall Street, who want this free income and all that stuff, those people they try to reach now by telling them that all of a sudden they don't have to pay interest anymore and they can just borrow as much money as they want to, or pay it back later, or not at all, dude, it's all good. No, this is not how it is in the Muslim world. This is not what happens there. You also pay interest, or people just don't lend money to you. Yeah, this is how it is. So you don't get rid of your student loans in that way, and you also cannot borrow and have a carefree, laborless life, when you all of a sudden adopt Sharia law. This is not how it works. So read the fine print, get educated on Islamic finance so that you see that it's actually a scam, and more about that in my next video about Mahometan investment policies in Europe, actually. So enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good day. Servus, Kameraden!